Welcome to episode 45 of the Relationship Marketing Podcast with Cody B. Today's guest is Mark Crowley. Mark spent over 20 years in the dog-eat-dog world of financial services. He held 2 national-level positions at one of America's largest financial institutions, where he was named Leader of the Year. Quite untraditionally, Mark proved that deeply caring about and supporting people, and thereby positively affecting employees' hearts, had a remarkable effect on driving sustained engagement, loyalty, and productivity. New and breakthrough medical research Mark draws upon in his book, Lead from the Heart, Traditional Leadership for the 21st Century, now proves that the heart is actually the driver of optimal human performance. A leadership pioneer, Mark shows us that leading from the heart is the most informed and enlightening thing a manager or organization can do. His book is now being taught in 9 American universities, including the educational PhD program at Brandman University in California and the MBA program at the University of Iowa. His Lead from the Heart podcast now has an audience in 124 countries. And now, Cody B.
Hello, everybody. This is Cody Bateman. Welcome to a brand new version of our Relationship Marketing Podcast. Very excited for our guest on the show today, as I always am. We have some amazing guests that come on here, and today's another one. It's just going to be incredible. Before I get into that introduction, again, I want to reach out and thank everybody. Congratulate all of our listeners for being students of marketing, students of relationship marketing, striving to sharpen your saws each and every week and to provide the best version of you out to the world. We believe that every single one of you are unique. You're unique individuals. You have a unique brand that you have to offer the world. And if you just find out the best version of you and give yourself away to other people, you win. And that's what this show is all about. And we have professionals that come on every single week and confirm that and tell us stories about that. And we've got a great one today. So without further ado, you've already heard his bio, Mr. Mark Crowley. How are you, my friend?
I'm wonderful. Thank you. How are you?
Good. You and I have not had a chance to really get to know each other yet. This is kind of we're early in our acquaintance, and we're establishing relationship as we go, and I'm learning more about you. Love the concept of selling from the heart. I've had the chance to see you on some other people's podcasts and share your vision and your story. So we've already heard a little bit about you from our host up front. But selling from the heart, the first thing is it says you have a podcast and that you have viewers in 124 countries. Is that true?
It's 125 as of yesterday.
125. So they keep adding.
Yeah. Way to go, Cuba.
Wow. So yeah. I guess I want to start there. You know, you have a great book that's out. How long have you been doing the podcast?
Started it in April of last year. So what is that? About 16 months. And then I actually took a couple months break at the end of last year. So November, December, we went dark. And then this summer I did the same thing from, I think, like mid-July through just like a couple weeks ago. So really it's about 35 episodes. And yeah, it's extraordinary.
So you're 35 episodes in, and you're in 100. You've got viewers from 125 countries. So how did that happen?
Well, I think it starts off with the fact that I think there's a couple things going on here. One is I have a pretty good Twitter following, and so I built that up through. I write for Fast Company magazine. I've written 25 articles for them. I write for LinkedIn. I've had a couple articles that have been read over 1 million times. So I've kind of got a brand out there, this idea about leading from the heart. And I innovated this. I mean, this is something that's emerging now. Our consciousness is changing. And we're saying we can't continue to manage and lead the same way that we've been leading for realistically 100 years. People are really sick and tired of going to work. And I mean it, sick and tired. Mm-hmm. And so I think the message itself is resonating. But I'll be honest with you, Cody, I'm kind of surprised that 125 different countries that there are people listening to this podcast. At the same time, I was really determined. There's a lot of them out there, as I'm sure you know. And so I thought, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it to the best of my abilities. So not only have I had some truly extraordinary people on, but I do the research. I'm picking these people, I'm handpicking them and hoping that they'll come on. In some cases, some people just say, they don't respond or they don't come on. But most of the time, I've had these extraordinary people, and I know their work because their work in some way, shape, or form validates my own thesis. And so because of that, we have these really dynamic, wonderful conversations. And I'm just having a conversation just like you and I are having. But what I'm finding from people who are listening is that they're connecting with us. They're connecting with me. And so that's the magic of it. I don't know how to explain it. I'm just very grateful for it.
Well, it's amazing. I mean, it's amazing that you've acquired that kind of following that quickly. And podcasting, you kind of mentioned this, podcasting is kind of the craze right now. Right? It seems like everybody needs to do a podcast or feels like they need to do a podcast. I started doing this podcast about a year ago, and there was really not a whole lot of strategy behind it. It wasn't like I had this big social media strategy with funnels and everything. I didn't have that kind of stuff. I own direct sales companies. So most of my business is done through word of mouth, direct sales, and we're starting to get more and more into social media. But I started doing podcasting just because I love to talk to people. I love to talk to professionals like you, been there, done that, people that are out there making an impact in the world. I love to chat. And so it's kind of natural for me to I have no idea if I do podcasting right or not, but I just like to have conversation with people. And we've gotten some amazing content out of this. And now you come from the financial services world. I know a lot of your sales background and stuff is there, and we'll get to that in a second. But now you've shifted over to author, speaker, trainer, influencer. Like you said, you've got a big following on Twitter, other social media. You've done the podcast. The podcast is very successful. There are a lot of our listeners right now that are in that same boat. They're in that boat where they've been in sales or they've been in marketing. They've had success. Maybe they've owned their own company or do own their own company. And it seems like there's a lot of people that want to shift into the influencer role, kind of like you have. You've shifted into an influencer role. What would your advice to those people be? How did you get started making that shift, coming over to being the author, the speaker, the trainer, the teacher, versus just being in the financial industry?
So I'll give you the big picture. So I spent, nearly 25 years in financial services, had 2 national level positions, and in my last role led a couple thousand stockbrokers across the country, record productivity, record revenue, record profit, named leader of the year. And then the company itself was so big, it got caught up in the Great Recession, and it was inevitably sold. And so the people who came and acquired the organization were viscerally. I just had this reaction. I can't work with those people. They're just culturally, everything about them, their whole philosophy was so dark and so contrary to what I knew needed to be done in order to really influence people to do great work. So after 6 months, I asked to go and I left. So my intention was to use the next year to write a book, really to fulfill an ambition that I'd had for a really long time, which was to say, I know that there are some leadership practices that are very uncommon, and that if I could teach these to managers, people, anybody in any occupation who's managing people, that they would have infinitely greater success. So that was the idea. And in the process, so I won't go into the details of this, but I will say that I had a rather destructive and unsettling, unstable childhood. And that it influenced me to manage people in a way that was much more caring, much more supportive. And I got extraordinary performance out of people, loyalty. And so ultimately what that meant was that I just kept getting promoted and promoted and promoted. No one ever looked under the hood to see what I was doing. They just saw the sales results and said, this guy's good, give him more, give him more, give him more. So I knew that it was successful. And so I was having a conversation. I was about to write the book. So I had like 10 months invested in this, had all my piles, did all my, my organizing, and I'm ready to write, thinking I'm going to be done in a year. And a friend of mine says, you have to explain why this works, right? And I said, well, I mean, you would think, like, you're laughing, right? But I was like, oh no. I said, well, why? And he goes, well, because people are going to think you need a shitty childhood in order to lead like this. And I knew he was right, but I was like, oh my God. So sitting right where I am talking to you, he goes, you got to figure out what it was that motivated people to respond to you. And so I thought, well, I mean, this is really good counsel, right? And so I started thinking about it, and all of a sudden it hit me that I was affecting the hearts in people. And I went home and I told my wife, I've wasted a year of my life, because anybody that I used to work with, as soon as they hear I'm talking about leading with any degree of heart, they're going to go, like, did he have a religious breakdown? Is he a spiritualist now? What kind of a nut is this guy? Like, that's not the Mark we knew, because no one ever really diagnosed what I was doing. And I got really depressed. I said, this is like a mistake. And one day, my wife, who's just this extraordinary counsel to me, she goes, well, didn't you already prove that it worked? And I was like, oh. Yes, just like this other guy telling me this. So all these, these pieces of inspiration. So I started to look for evidence, and I spent over about 13, 14 months looking for more proof, which became the first half of the book. And when I got done, I realized, oh my God, like, I was put on this earth to do this. I'm here to make this message. I needed that whole, my mom dying when I was very young, and this psychologically, emotionally abusive father who kicked me out of the house, and, with no support, nothing, never saw him again until he died. And then having to work my way up and just survive, and then try to get an education and get my career going and all those kinds of things was obviously really, truly unsettling. But I realized, man, I had to have that experience in order to have empathy, to care about people the way that I did, to lead the way that I did. And then when I found all the evidence to validate it, including the most critical piece of this, which is what gave me permission to call it Lead from the Heart, was that the heart is actually a feeling sensing organ. The science around this is emerging now. And that the heart and the mind are in constant communication, but principally we know that feelings and emotions drive human behavior. We think, I think, therefore I am, Descartes said 400 years ago, and we've been influenced by that. We think emotions have nothing to do with it, but really it's all about how we feel. So my belief is, if you manage how people feel and you give them experiences that drive positive emotions, which we know human beings are here hardwired to thrive on, you're going to get infinitely better success. So tying all this up, when I got done, I was like, I'm not going back to work. I'm not going back to that. This is what I'm here to do. So, another story. I paid a woman $10,000 to help me strategize on how to get my message out there. Now, I knew that I was on, a little bit of quicksand, but she confirmed it. So I give her the money. She reads my book. She reads some of my articles, and she comes back and she goes, I have plan A and plan B. You're going to hate plan A, but it's what I'm recommending. And she goes, plan B is really not that good of a plan at all. Which one do you want to hear? And I go, just tell me which one you want to tell me. So plan A, she goes, now I'm going to paraphrase this, and you and your audience can fill in the blanks, Cody. You will effing fail if you continue to use the expression lead from the heart. Stop using it. Don't ever use it again. Don't use it in anything you write. And I said, did you cash the check? No, I didn't really, but I should have, but I'm sure she had already cashed it. But what she was trying to tell me, so keep in mind, this book came out in July of 2011. Mm-hmm. And I spent the last 5 or 6 years taking punches from people who misinterpreted what I was talking about and somehow assumed that it was some soft and weak kind of management, when in fact, it's the most human thing you can do that's aligned to what human beings need in order to thrive. The way we've been managing is the most destructive way, and it goes back 100 years ago when we thought we could basically abuse people, squeeze people, take advantage of people, and get the most productivity out of them. And today, that just simply doesn't work any longer. So now, I think what's happening is that people, and one of the reasons why this audience is so big on the podcast, is that people are really desperate for this. And it's not just like what's happened in these 6 or 7 years since the book came out is we've reached this tipping point where people are like, he's right, we have to do this, and how do we do it? And that's what the podcast is about. It's about explaining it and hearing it from all these different people and how they have added more components to it. So research, authors, people that have done work around this to validate it. So what's happened in the process is I used the title Lead from the Heart because of the science, knowing that this woman that I paid all that money to was right. And knowing that I was going out into the world and I was going to get punched in the stomach over and over and over. I had a speaking agent told me, he goes, I am more interested in you than any other speaker. And he goes, you don't get 90% of the opportunities to speak. And it was crushing to me, obviously. And I said, well, what's the reason? I personalized it and thought, am I not that good of a speaker or what? And he goes, at the last minute, it comes down to you and somebody else. And then the meeting planner goes, I'm just afraid that guy's going to come in here and start singing Kumbaya on the stage. And they don't get that I understand it,
Yeah, my goodness, sitting here listening to you tell that story, we resonate at a level that you probably are not aware of yet. Just a little bit about my background. And for all the listeners, again, you and I are just getting acquainted right now. I've run several companies that have become premier relationship marketing companies. I've been on stages for the last 15 years, basically sharing the same type of message that you're sharing. I've been teaching the philosophy of give for the sake of giving. Don't ask for referrals, deserve them. Treat people kindly. The whole essence of everything we do is centered around the heart. It's centered around, now, we don't use the phrase leading from the heart, but it's certainly centered around leading from the heart. We just had a convention 2 months ago where the theme of the convention was called The One Thing. And the one thing in our world is everything you do from the heart. That's the one thing, everything you do from the heart. We have a greeting card company, a way to follow up with people in business and in your personal life. And we literally have two.
One of your clients sent me one recently.
There you go. So here's what's interesting. What's interesting is that the way we sell our product, we have people telling us the same thing that people have been telling you in the way we sell our product. We literally sell our product where we have what we call a heartfelt card send and a system send. A system send is where the system does the sending. Like you can put a group of names together and send a whole group of cards out, like for the holidays, invitations, whatever. We have drip campaigns where you can drip on a client. They get a card today and one in 2 months and 4 months and 6 months. And system automatically does that. And the marketplace, that's what they want. They want the system send. They want the automated send. And everybody in the world says that's what you need to focus on, Cody. And they've always said that. That's what you need to focus on. Well, listen, I didn't start this company for system send. I'll give you a system send because it makes sense. But I didn't start this company for a system send. I started this company to help people act on their promptings to reach out in kindness. So the heartfelt send is by far the most important. You got to sit down and choose a card or build one with somebody's picture on it. Physically type a message to that person so that there's a connection from one soul to another soul. And you push the send button and it goes out. We've been teaching it forever, and we've had our critics and naysayers still do that all heartfelt stuff. And again, it's the same stuff. It's like kumbaya, you're going to go in the closet and, you get that whole messaging. But what we and our customer base has learned, just like you are teaching, is that the heartfelt send is the very thing that makes relationship marketing work. And I'm telling you, it's so hard. It's so hard to teach the masses that message.
Well, because here's the thing. So, I'm going to give you, huge validation because the systematic card process, people see through that. they know you didn't have a damn thing to do with it, right? So you get it and you look at it and you go, there's nothing personalized about that. So it's not authentic. And because it's not authentic, it actually works against you. I think less of you when I get the automated card, right? Because it's all in a cycle, it's all in a system. Same thing with these emails. I get, sure you do, with these emails, and you can tell that they're being sent to the same, like 1,000 people, and they just insert your name in there. Yeah. And I'm Mark C. Crowley, so anytime I see Dear Mark C., I pretty much know, right? And I'm just like, goodbye. It's so insincere. And so I don't really care whether or not there are people out there that think that what you just described is stupid or, it's not. Because what we respond to is the thoughtfulness, right? We respond to people who do something for us personally, right? And so when I was managing these brokers, first of all, I came over, the retail banks where you go in and get mortgages and consumer loans and investments and stuff and checking accounts. Well, I managed a large group of those in San Diego. And then the organization asked me if I would go get my securities licenses, business I have no experience in whatsoever, and come over now and manage all these brokers. And so they created all this suspicion, like, what's he going to do? And he doesn't know anything about our business. And so the first thing that I did was I sat down with my management team. Now, keep in mind, these are senior vice presidents in one of the largest financial institutions. And the first thing they said in my first meeting was, the way you've been managing all those people in the branches is never going to work with these stockbrokers. And I was like, what are you talking about? I was like, what? Like, that's the first thing you have to tell me? They wanted to just tell me everything you do is bullshit and just keep it away from our people, our business, right? So I go, what are you talking about? And they go, well, they just want to be working. They just want to be left alone. They don't get paid unless they sell. And so, being engaged with them, spending time with them is not what they're going to want. And I just had enough experience in my life to go, that's patently stupid. So I got seriously. And so I got in a car and I got on a plane and went and visited the top 25 brokers across the country. Basically just said, if I could do one thing for you, what would it be? You know what they said, like almost universally? You just did it. Wow. You're here. You're in my office.
Yeah, interesting.
It was like, and at that point, Cody, like you could see like eyes watering, like I matter enough to you to get on the plane. Nobody's even giving me any time. So I go, okay, thank you for that. What else can I give you? So I'm here. So if I give you one more thing, what would it be? Give me some coaching. Spend some time with me. Give me some attention. They weren't like, we need new product or we need new marketing lists. They weren't asking for that. They were asking for very human things. So I said, well, I'm going to promise you that you're going to have that. And I personally will care about you. You're one of the top people in this company. Now that I have your back. We had record. I didn't do anything after that. I mean, I did other things, but that's what drove the productivity. Was like, people are like, that guy loves us. And that is really what it came down to. So you asked me a little while ago, like, what advice would you give people listening who are thinking that they might want to be, out there, if you will? Don't do anything. I forget who it was, but I was trying to get into social media. I've got no following. Nobody knows who I am. The book is out, and I'm like out there alone. And I started reading anything I could find out about social media. And somebody famous who's still out there, and I apologize for not being able to quote him, he said, give and give and give some more. Yeah. And that's what I've done. If you listen to my podcast, I very rarely, say, well, please read my book, or please. Very rarely. I just put it out there, and my hope is people are going to find me and say, I love the work he's doing. I'd love to do work with him. But I'm not out there trying to sell myself. I write articles. I do the podcast. I obviously have the book. That's the only thing that I'm really selling out there realistically. And even then, I'm not promoting it. I'm giving people information, and I want people to look at me and say, that guy is authentic. Like on Twitter, for example, I've got 136,000 followers. And I get up every morning and I go to the gym, and I get on a bike or an ellipse with my phone, and I literally spend an hour every single morning responding to all of the tweet responses that I got overnight when I was sleeping. from Europe, from India, wherever people are. And people respond to me all the time, like, I can't believe you take the time to do this. And I'm like, well, why else would I do it? Like, just be a machine and just tweet out there? It's like, if I'm not making a connection with you, then why am I wasting all this time? Why am I getting into the gym at 5:30 to do this? And people feel that. And so, that's all it's about. You and I are having a greater connection than I am with 99% of the people that I tweet with. But if you go to see the interaction, people feel like, I know that guy, like he's my friend and he cares about me and I'm learning from him. And that's where it's at.
Well, there's a key to what you're saying there. It's just putting in, people see when you put in the extra effort. They see the difference between a heartfelt card versus a system card. They see the difference between, you putting social media out there and not only putting it out there, but personally responding to every comment. I need to learn from that because I'm not very good at that yet. I don't like to spend time behind a screen. I don't like to live my life through a screen. And so as a result of that, a mistake that I have made is because I don't like to be behind a screen, I don't get behind a screen. Now, I do go and comment on follower stuff, but not anywhere close to the extent that you do. So I got to learn from that and create a habit.
I don't necessarily agree. I have to be out there because nobody knew who I was. I came out of financial services and I wrote a book that had nothing to do with financial services. Right. And then on top of it, I put the word heart in it, which is like, and by the way, the woman that I paid all the money to, she goes, just start using the expression killer engagement.
Oh my God.
You'll do great, And I'm like, but that's not who I was. So, I've signed up for a lot of pain, which she was trying to help me avoid. But at some point, people come to realize that I've been saying the same thing for all these years, that I understand it intimately, that it's who I am. And if you can embody that message, but in order to get there, I needed to write all these articles. I needed to, build this Twitter follower. And I didn't anticipate having that kind of a large following, to be honest with you. But it doesn't really matter. If I had 10,000 people, I'd still be doing the exact same thing because those people are showing interest in me. You have people showing interest in you in other ways. So you don't have to adopt my philosophy or my strategy in order to be successful. Everybody is different,
Well, I appreciate that, but you have a lot more following on social media than I do. So maybe I better learn some things from what you're doing. So I think that's great. So this is a fascinating conversation because there's so many similar things that we have gone through. Talk to us a little bit about, what I'm hearing in your theme. Every time I interview people, there's kind of a theme that follows what you're saying. And what I'm tapping into as your theme is, you use the word authentic a lot. You use the word, just staying true to me. You said a lot. I just need to do what's in here and do that as best as I can. How important is it today? Because again, today people are very opinionated. Everybody in the world is going to tell you what you ought to do. And they got stats to prove it. And everybody's a guru. Everybody's a professional. Everybody's going to tell you what to do. Just like this lady telling you to get rid of that title. How important is it today to truly stay true to yourself no matter what? I mean, that sounds cliche because everybody says you need to be true to yourself and stay true to yourself no matter what. Well, that's great, but it's not easy to do. So it's a twofold question. How important is it to stay true to who you are? And how do you stay true to who you are? How do you do it when there's so much stuff around telling you not to?
First of all, it can be painful to do that. In other words, the easy way is to not be authentic. The easy way is to go, just to go with wherever people are and try to schmooze your way into success, right? And so, and I really care about you, so I'm just going to, tell you what you want to hear, basically, in order to get you to transact with me. What Adam Grant calls a taker. Mm-hmm. And takers succeed in our society. There's simply no question. But this might sound a little, woo-woo out there from the guy that doesn't really sing Kumbaya on stage. But there's really a shift going on in our consciousness, and I think our politics are playing into this. But I really think it's principally people are really unhappy, and I've written about this. It's not just like unhappy, like, you know, wish I could go play golf today. It's like you just wake up and you're just like, this my life can't be like this. We have increases in depression, mental illness, anxiety, suicide that are unheard of. I mean, it's going like this. It's crazy, right? And you look at that and you go, okay, well, what might be the source of it? Like, what's changed? One of the things that's changed is technology. You know, we have these, you know, I'm on my phone at 5:30 in the morning by choice, right? I'm doing that but we have bosses that think that people, I can email, you know, my employees and they have to respond to it. So they go home and, like, you know, we talked earlier, my son just had baby twins, right? One of them has had some pretty serious, one operation, pretty serious health problems that they've been trying to maneuver. Now, he fortunately is self-employed. His wife has an incredible boss and has been allowed them actually extra time to kind of maneuver through this. That's not what most people have. They have bosses that don't really care if you're having dinner with your family. They just want to shoot you an email and say, hey, respond to this. Could you get on a quick call? People never know when their day ends. And so this is creating a lot of anxiety. Now, I've written about this and argued that companies need to create some boundaries because we used to have them. My father was like a very senior guy, like one of the top 2 or 3 guys at General Electric when I was growing up. And in those days, you know, on Friday night, he'd stay late and he'd work and get everything done. And then he'd come home, take the train home, and he was done. He played golf every Saturday and Sunday. He enjoyed his weekends. There wasn't any more work. There wasn't waking up in the morning and looking at your phone to see if your boss was worried about something or asked you to write a report or whatever. And so we're asking more people than is really fair. So that's part of it. But I think people are like, it's like a treadmill. I can't stay on this treadmill even though I have to in order to keep my job. And that's what's creating all this stress. But on the other hand, you've got bosses who just simply don't know how to manage. We know statistically that like 70% of people that are in management roles should never have been given their jobs. They lack an interest in other people. They don't really thrive when other people succeed. They actually compete against them. And they're really mechanical. They're not like thinking about this decision. If I make this decision, how's it going to make people feel? And if you do those things, you're going to make people feel bad. And I don't mean feel bad like, you know, like the Mets lost the game and they're not going to the playoffs bad. I'm talking about bad in the sense that, like, I just can't deal with this any longer. And so I think what's happening is that you have now 2 generations, Gen Z, which had their first college graduates this year. So the first Gen Zs are 22 years old. And then the Millennials. And they have looked at all the predecessor leadership styles and they're like, hey, man, we can't continue this. You just can't bleed people like this and take advantage of people and then lay them off at the first opportunity you have to when things get rough, and cut people off at their legs and cut their benefits. And look at Google. I mean, Google as an organization right now has more contract employees than they have real employees. This is a strategy I personally believe is unsustainable because of the connection. You can't work for somebody and feel like you're being exploited and not have that translate into your behavior. So I really think that we're at this point now where people are just fed up and they're going to be demanding something very different. And if organizations don't change, if organizations go, well, you know, we've been successful up until now, why do we need to change now? They're going to fail. And here's an interesting thing. We know this right now, that the number of people quitting jobs for like the last 13 months in America, and this is universal. So everything we're talking about is true outside of the United States. But in America, 13 consecutive months of record job quitting, like 2.5% to 3% of people every single month are quitting their jobs. So why would that be the case? I mean, if you had people quitting your company all the time, you'd think you'd go, well, maybe I'm not doing something right here. You know, it can't be all about more money. But that's not what happens. People just build it in. It's like, well, we have 35% turnover, so we just build that cost into our model and we're okay with it. and they don't realize the harm that's being done to people. And I just don't think people want to work like that anymore. They want to work for a company that cares about them. They want to work for a boss that cares about them, that truly cares about them, and makes business decisions that demonstrate that to them. And then, boil it down to something that I know you believe in, is we really truly reap what we sow in leadership. If you're going to take from people, they're going to take from you. If you give people, here's an interesting story. There's a guy named Robert Cialdini, Cialdini. He's a professor at Arizona State. And your audience should read this book because it's absolutely phenomenal book that relates to sales, but it's called Influence. And one of the things that he has proved is that we human beings are hardwired to reciprocate when we're given to. So I'll give you an example. He says, going back to caveman days, he simplifies it. It's much more sophisticated thinking, but nevertheless, I have a piece of meat. You don't have any piece of meat. And the only way you're going to survive is if I give you a piece of meat. Right? That's how humanity survived. That's how the human species survived. We looked out for each other. We collaborated and cooperated. Next time you get a piece of meat, there's sort of this obligation that you're going to give me a piece of your meat. That's how it works. So now I knock on your door and I go, hey, Cody, my wife made like some brownies and we ended up with a lot more than we could possibly eat. So I just wanted to come by and give you a dozen brownies. So he says, what would you say if that were you? So you might think, well, your first instinct might be, oh, Mark, that's like so thoughtful. Thank you very much. We love brownies. He says what people in their heart say is, oh, shit, now I got to give him something. Right?
Right.
So like, hey, can I get you a glass of wine or, want to stay for dinner? And he described it as sort of this hot potato. Like, here, take my coffee mug, like anything I can give you in order to get that burden. And it goes back into, tens of thousands of years in our cellular memory that this is how we behaved. So now translate that into leadership. If you're making decisions that demonstrate, start with pay people. Like if $10 an hour is, I'm making up a number. If $10 an hour is the standard in your market for a job, if you pay people 11, you're automatically demonstrating that you value people more than other people do, right? That's 10% different, and that matters to people, even at a $10 level rate. In fact, you could argue that it would take more. But if you make any decisions, we're going to have everybody leave early on a Friday during the summer. If you make those kinds of decisions, and people can feel that that's honest and authentic and done not to manipulate, but done because we care about you and we want you to go enjoy it, couple Friday nights in the summer, while it's still beautiful out, people go, I want to reciprocate. I want to give back to a boss like that. And that is my experience. People who worked for me worked extremely hard simply because they knew I loved them, I cared about them, and it was real. And so interestingly, if you go up to people who used to work for me and you'd say, okay, what's one word that you would use to describe Mark Crowley? You would say, well, it's hard. He's the hard guy. Right? But it wouldn't be. It would be demanding. Almost universally, people that ever worked for me have said he's like the most demanding guy I ever worked for. But the only way that I could be that demanding and set really high expectations was because I was doing everything to make their lives better. They didn't have to go home worried about whether or not I cared about them. That's a big one. Safety. Right. Just that idea,
So yeah, reciprocation. I guess that's a word. The law.
Reciprocity.
Reciprocity. The law of reciprocity, and it's fundamental in everything that you are teaching and everything that we are teaching. We give for the sake of giving. Reciprocity is a fundamental law, and you touched on it. It's like there's that instinct. It's a human instinct that when somebody's kind to you, you're kind back to them. When somebody gives you a gift, you return with a gift. And there are times when you feel when you feel like, oh my goodness. But I think the key, though, the key to that is, and you've mentioned it in every other facet of your life, you need to be authentic in everything you do. So in other words, I'm not giving you the brownies because I want you to give me a gift in return. I'm giving you the brownies because I'm giving you the brownies. I really want to just give you some brownies,
right,
and say welcome or whatever. And it's really important because I'll tell you, there's a lot of people. Perfect example. It's just, and it's funny because I have people do stuff that people are trying to do relationship marketing, but a lot of them do it the wrong way. Guy the other day has been trying to get an appointment with me forever. And I get a text and an email from him saying, hey, Cody, did you get my Crumble Cookies at your office? Now, I don't know if you ever heard of Crumble Cookies, but these big, huge, super awesome cookies. And he said, did you get my Crumble Cookies in the office? And I hope you enjoyed them. And can I come see you Thursday at 10 or Thursday at 12, which works best for you? It's like he just completely destroyed the giving of the Crumble cookie. I walked into the office,
right,
and full of the Crumble cookies, they were there.
Right.
Already destroyed it because why did he give me the Crumble cookies?
Because he wanted to get something from you, right? But here's an interesting thing. Adam Grant, who's a professor at Wharton, you're probably familiar with him. He's very prolific, very, like the youngest tenured professor ever at Wharton. And he wrote a book called Give and Take. And basically what he proved, he lays it out like this. He says, there are three different kinds of people in the world. Two different kinds of people in the world, givers and takers. Three different kinds of people in the world, givers, takers, and matchers. Okay, so I described the taker earlier. You and I are having this conversation. I don't really care what you think about me. All I want to do is get you to buy something from me. So that's it, right? And when I'm done, and I just want to get what I want. A matcher is that guy. Did you get the cookies? Because I want to come see you.
That's right.
So, right? And then the giver is obviously a giver, generous kind of a person. So what he discovered is that of those three, one of them is infinitely more successful in their interactions, in their careers, and so forth. So let me start off with this and say, of the three, which one is the least successful? The giver, the taker, or the matcher?
Are you asking me the question?
I am.
Mm-hmm.
And don't worry about getting it wrong because it's
off the top of my head, I'd say the taker.
Okay, you would think so, right? Yeah. So his premise is it's the giver, and here's why. So now I go to you, Cody. You work for me, and I go, hey, Cody, where are you on project A and B? And you go, well, I'm behind on A and I'm behind on B, and I'm still working on C. And I go, well, what's going on, man? Where are you? And how come you're not keeping up and getting your work done? You go, well, I've been helping Mark, and I've been helping, Bart, and I've been really helping. And so it's like, well, but you're still accountable for the work that you're doing, and so I have to hold you accountable. So you're not successful. So then he says, so which one of the three, the giver, the matcher, and the taker, is the most successful?
In that situation?
No, it's in the exact same situation. Who's the most successful? The giver, the taker, the matcher?
The third one is the matcher?
Matcher, like I match, so like you, like the guy, he says, here are your cookies. Now you need to give me something, right? Yeah. So, right. It's a match. So the idea is that if I give you something, I'm expecting something in return.
Right.
So it's the taker who he doesn't even care to give. He's not coming in with any cookies. It's like, hey, I need to meet with you Tuesday or Thursday. Which one's going to work, right? Matcher at least goes, hey, I brought you these cookies. Now you need to give me the meeting. Right. And then the giver is just going to give you the cookies and not ask for anything. So of those three, which one is the most successful?
Well, in a work setting, I would probably say the matcher.
So here's his answer. And this is what the whole book is about, and it's scientifically proved. And it's a trick question. It's the giver again. But the difference between being a giver and failing and a giver and winning is that the giver who takes care of their own responsibilities and gives, those are the people that are most successful. So givers win as long as they're nailing their own responsibilities and doing their own work. So If you're out there helping Bart and all the other people, plus getting your work done, you're going to have incredible success. That's his premise. Now, I can tell you, in dealing with some pretty impressive people, and this is like one of the most impressive books that's been written in the last 10 years, no question, and most influential books that's been written. And all the academics, I guarantee you, have read this. And yet, from day to day, I just see examples of people being takers.
You know, it's interesting, and I may have even mentioned it on one of these podcasts before, but Kevin Hart, the comedian Kevin Hart, told a story once. I don't know what the setting was, but he gave a scenario, and man, it just really stuck with me, and it relates to what you just said. He said, listen, if your car breaks down and your car is broken down on the side of the road and you get out of your car and you go out and you try to wave people down, put your thumb out, you know, waving people down for help, chances are most people are just going to keep driving by. But if your car breaks down, you're on the side of the road and you get out and you start pushing your car, everybody stops to help you push the car. So I think that's related to what you were just saying. It
is very interesting point. Yes,
yeah.
But it's the nature of giving. You know, it's the nature. If you start off with the attitude that I'm owed,
right, you're done. You're done.
You know, it's sort of a problem. And then, you know, like if you think about like all these Twitter followers, I'm not like trying to optimize. So I'm like, I wonder which one of these guys is going to hire me as a speaking engagement or a consulting engagement. So I'm only going to respond to the people that I think are going to be those people. You can't play that game. You gotta give to everyone and just let it play itself out.
Okay, so I want to go back to something you said a minute ago. This might get a little controversial now, but hey, that doesn't hurt us every once in a while. I want to expand people's thoughts. You were talking about how corporations, companies need to shift to be more caring, more giving, have, you know, more of a better atmosphere of true, genuine connection and caring of people, which I couldn't agree with more. And you talk a lot about, you know, young people coming into the workplace and things of that nature. Now, here's where the controversial part comes in. You know, I've been an employer for 30 years. I've employed probably thousands of people over that 30-year period. Most of my staffs usually averages in about, at one time, I'm employing 85 to 120 employees at one time. And I've got managers that manage things and everything else. But I certainly, over 30 years, have noticed a shift of people coming into the workplace. And I do think what you're saying, we're shifting as a society where we do have to provide a more caring, giving, nurturing, loving environment in order to compete and do things today, because we are shifting. However, here's where it's going to get fun, because some listeners are going to agree and others are going to get all sensitive about it, and that's okay. Don't you find, though, that a lot of times, you know, people coming into the workplace, and I'm not going to put age to it, it could be any age, there's this sense of entitlement. There's this sense of, you know, hey, I'm here, take care of me, basically pay me and then I'll do the work. You know, pay me a premium now and then I'll show you how good I am. And I'm sorry, but I just don't come from that walk of life. I believe that what you send out is what comes back. And so as you come into the workplace, you do got to prove yourself. You do got to take some hard knocks. You do got to be coached and trained. You do got to withstand being told that you did it wrong, or that you need to be corrected, or things of that nature. Now, I'm saying that in a little bit of an exaggerated tone, but I do truly believe that. So where is that balance? Where's that balance? You know, it's like, again, it's great, but do we have to create a kumbaya atmosphere where it's all just positive feedback all the time, or where is the hard knocks coaching? Because I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose the hard knocks coaching part of life, because I think it's important for all of us. I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't get the crap kicked out of me by mentors and coaches that brought me up. So what are your thoughts there?
So the way that we have two thinking organs. The truth is, intelligence is distributed through cells throughout our whole body. So like when people say I had a gut feeling, that's true too, right? But for all intents and purposes, we have two sources of intelligence. One is our mind and the other is our heart. And we have marginalized the heart forever. We have intentionally kept the heart out for all the reasons you've described. You know, we need a hard-nosed kind of a workplace in order to get things done. And the minute you bring heart in, it's going to be soft, and people are going to get soft around the middle, and they're going to take advantage of you, and all the things you just described and feel very passionately about. So I come in with this language of lead from the heart, and people go, well, that's patently stupid, right? I mean, doesn't get business, right? You can't come in here and hug people all the time and tell them you love them, and that's not what I'm talking about at all. And I hope through the course of the time that we've been talking that you can tell that I know how to manage people and get performance out of people. And the part that is missing in business is the heart. And so when people hear it, they go, oh, you know, people are going to take advantage of you, and you call those kinds of things. I didn't say you hold people accountable or train them or teach them or hold disciplines to them. It's just the intention. Am I going to care about this person, or am I going to try to grind this person? That's a big difference. So if I care about this person, the way that I coach them is going to be very different. The way that I'm oriented towards helping them. So I think there's enough letters on the board for me to figure out that you're describing millennials, the way, you know, people that are in their 30s for all intents and purposes, you know, late 20s, early 30s, coming into work, that you think, okay, they're spoiled, they have these expectations. So there's nothing for you to sit down and say, look, if you're going to work for me and work for our company, I am going to be very supportive. And these are the kinds of things that we do here. And this is the culture that we have. But I also expect that you're going to perform. I also expect that you're going to deliver. So the way that I did it was I just basically told people, here are your goals, and you're accountable. And I'm here to support you in any possible way. And I created this very collaborative environment where everyone who was succeeding had to share what they were doing to help other people succeed. And it elevated everybody. And we were the biggest, most successful region in the bank. There were like, I think at one point, 85, and then it got up to over 100 regions, big regions. And we were number one in the company for 36 consecutive months. It was because people wanted to do great work. They felt rewarded and appreciated. So a big component of this is thanking people and acknowledging people. And I'm not just saying send them a card. You know, don't misunderstand me. I'm saying, I call it institutionalizing recognition, where you bring people in and you talk about what we did. Here's what our goals were for August. And during August, here's what we did. We exceeded our goals. Of the 20 people that are working for me, 18 of you exceeded your goals or met them. And I want to acknowledge all 18 of you. And you do that on a regular basis. People will work really hard for recognition. So if you just start off with the premise that millennials are spoiled brats and they're a pain in the ass to work with, and I'm going to have to be hard-nosed with them, they feel that. And they don't get your history. They don't know that you had to work your ass off in order to get what you got. And they're just looking at you like, what a jerk, you know, like, right? And so you have to meet people where they are. And you also have to realize that it's our generation that raised these kids. So we have a blame in this too.
No doubt about it.
You know?
Well, and again, you know, I kind of spoke that in extremity just to make that.
No, it's great. It's a perfect example. Really great.
It is. And again, really everything comes down to balance. Everything we do in life comes down to balance. It's like even the concept of relationship marketing. This podcast is about relationship marketing. Well, there's two words there. There's building relationship and there's marketing, and marketing your products, services, whatever. And both are important. And what we talk about is relationship. There's a reason that relationship is the first word. It's the most important word. And we have a philosophy that, you know, relationship should be the focus 80% of the time, and you sprinkle in some marketing 20% of the time, but you got to do both. Same thing of what you're talking about of you know, hiring employees and creating the right environment for them. It's about balance. And it's probably the 80-20 rule. They got to feel buoyed up, encouraged. We all do. We all need to feel buoyed up, encouraged, whatever. But there's that 20% side that says we're gonna there's expectation here, and we're.
I don't think you need to quantify it.
Yeah, you don't. No, you don't. I'm kind of relating to
things. But let's just use this as a fulcrum. Okay, so this is all mind, all heart. Okay?
Right.
Well, so right now it's in the middle. So let's use your example of relationship and marketing. Okay, or mind and heart in terms of the decisions that we make. Right. So I might go, okay, I'm going to do something. I'm going to buy everybody these cookies today. So the fulcrum moves a little bit like this. When we have the hard decisions to make, almost universally, we make it like this.
Right.
We make the mind decision. So this is the problem. And it goes back to one of the earlier questions you had. It's like, how do you do this? You have to know what your true north is, which is to say, I'm going to make the tough decision. The easy decision is to cut everybody's salaries by $1 an hour, or the easy decision is to cut hours, or easy decision is to do this. But what's the best decision? What does my heart tell me, right? And so people, you think, well, so if I haven't got enough sales this month and I got a number I got to meet, we go this way.
That's right.
And instead of trusting the balance or trusting even leaning in this direction. And that's where most people fail. They go, screw it. I gotta get a sale, and so I'm gonna be a taker, and they blow the whole system up. And I'll be honest with you, my wife says sometimes I'll say something snarky, and she'll go, well, that's not very hard-like. And what she's trying to say is, you got to live the brand, man. If that's who you're gonna be, you got to be that all the time.
That's right.
So that's the point.
No, that's really good. While I was sitting there listening to you and you were doing the pendulum thing, those that see this on YouTube will have seen the visual of you doing the pendulum. I kind of envision you and I on a stage, live stage, collaborating this very concept, because it's such a powerful, there's so much in this message that we're talking about right now, is creating that proper balance in life and truly leading from the heart. Our whole society and all humanity, in my mind, is making the shift. There is this shift going on. We are a more conscious people today. We're more spiritual by nature, and some people like or don't like that word, but it's the reality. We're more spiritual by nature. We're more heart by nature. Our whole society is driven that way. So people really got to pay attention to leading from the heart and creating and keeping the balance, because you hit it right on the head. The way I was raised is not the way to be raised today. It's just, there is a shift. There's no question about it. But at the same time, you don't want to overcompensate and, create some non-accountability. So I think
you always have to hold people accountable. But you have to get really deep inside of yourself and say, because if you have a strong bias, and by the way, the article that I was mentioning earlier that's been read, like nearly 1 million times, is about how to manage millennials. And having raised one, I learned from him. So here's the story. So he was an all-American water polo player, really a great student, super, super smart kid. And he goes up to Cal Berkeley, and the coach says, you're not big enough. You're not going to play the first year, so I'm redshirting you, which meant 5 years of tuition for dad and room and board instead of 4. So my son comes out of college with no debt, and we're having breakfast. He's now got his degree after 5 years. And I said, so what are you thinking? Like, what are you thinking you want to do? And don't judge my son too harshly here, because there's more to the story. He says, I just sure as hell know I don't want your career. And I was like, what? Like, it hurt me, and I was like, especially since I had written all these checks for 60 months, Right. And so I said, well, what do you mean? And he goes, well, basically working in a corporate environment, he saw the abusiveness from the people that I work for, and the ridiculous hours and the expectations and the constant threats and the stress that he saw me under and all of it. And he was like, I don't want that. So I started to work on this article, and I was talking to Jim Harder, who's the head of research at Gallup, and he was giving me some of their research. And so I wrote the article, but it effectively was sort of this, the two of us were really doing it together. And so I started off the article and I said, before I tell you how to manage millennials, let me tell you how we created millennials.
Right.
And we created them by seeing people, parents, mom and dad, not home when they came home from school. And they come home and they never spend any time. Their parents are like having wine at night because they're so stressed out. They don't have any time for their kids. And then they get laid off when the recession hits. And they're like, wait a minute, my parents killed themselves and this is how I don't want any part of this.
Right.
So when you understand how they got there, you understand, okay, so how do I manage this? Now, I went on to be my son's best man in his wedding. So this was a one and done, but what he told me in that conversation is what led to the success of that article. Millennials were the ones going, hell yeah, thank you for acknowledging how we got to be millennials and why we're different. And so once you get understanding from people, then you know what to give them. And so take the time to do that.
Excellent. Well, there you have it, everybody. Mark Crowley, he is the best-selling author of Selling from the Heart.
Lead from the heart.
Leading from the heart. Sorry, I had our good friend.
I know. You had the Selling from the Heart guy on.
We've got a Selling from the Heart, which is Larry Levine. We have Lead from the Heart from Mark Crowley.
There it is. I don't know if you can see it, but there you go.
I'm assuming they can get that on Amazon.
They can.
Yeah, just go to Amazon.com and look for Lead from the Heart from Mark Crowley. I'm looking forward to getting my copy and getting into and devouring that. So appreciate you, and would love to work with you in the future, Mark. I think there's a lot of cool stuff we could do together. And just appreciate all that you're doing out there to elevate people's mindsets and make a difference in the world. So thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Cody. I appreciate being on, and I appreciate that. I'd love to work with you sometime. It'd be fun. I can see us on that stage together. That'd be great.
Let's make it happen. Let's make it happen.
If you have enjoyed this episode of the Relationship Marketing Podcast with Cody B, be sure to subscribe to the show and leave a review so that together we can get this message, The Power of Human Connection, out to the world. You can find Cody's new book, The Power of Human Connection, on Amazon or the Send Out Cards gift store.